This time we're going to begin the funeral services of Mr. Howard J. Adolph. Rabbi Michael Siegel, Cantor Rachel Brooke will be officiating.
The Battle of Normandy comprised the largest seaborne invasion in history. 150,000 men set out that day to turn the tide of the war. Howard Adolph was one of those men who risked his life for our freedom. On that day, all the men heard these words from their commander, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms, on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well trained, well equipped, and battle hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking. Corporal Howard J. Adolph was one of those 150,000 Allied soldiers that fought against all odds to take the cliffs of Normandy and turn the tide of war. After that great battle, Howard found himself in the role of liberator. He came across Jews as he marched through Europe who had survived the Nazi terror. He was greeted by them with the word Landsman, which simply means a person from your place of birth. He understood the deep connection that he shared with each of these people liberated from death itself. But after the German surrender, there was more fighting yet to be done. Howard and his comrades were sent to the Philippines, where the fighting continued against an enemy that refused to stop fighting even after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Today, as we honor Howard's service to this country, we welcome an honor guard to celebrate not only Howard's service to this country, but all those who have rightfully been called the greatest generation. Let us rise and remember the sacrifice of those who fought to secure our service. We thank the Honor Guard for being with us and for their service to our country. Howard was one of those who participated in the honor flight, and this is a hat that he wore with pride. World War II veteran, 1941 to 1945. We turn to the book of Psalms. Psalm 121.
שמיים בארץ, אל ייתן למות רגליך, אל ינום שומרך, הנה לא ינום ולא יישן, שומר ישראל, אדוני Adonai tzilcha al yad yeminecha, yomam hashemesh lo yikeka, ve'areach balayla. Adonai yishmarcha mikol ra, yishmor nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitecha uvoecha mehata ve'ad olam.
I will lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? The source of my help is the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. God will not let you falter. Your guardian does not slumber. Surely the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is at your right hand to protect you. The Lord your keeper gives shelter. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all harm. The Lord will preserve your soul. God will guard your going and coming from this time forth and forevermore. The 23rd Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echzar, v'hinot sheyarbitzeni, al menuchot, al menuchot, yenach aleini. Nafshi yeshove v'yeshove, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, yancheni v'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Hashem Roshi Kosi Revaya Achtom Chesed Irdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai Kol Yemei Chayai Vishavti Bevet Adonai Leorach Yamim Adonai Rovi Lo Echsar Adonai Rovi Lo Echsar.
Please join me as we read together the 23rd Psalm in English in the inner cover page of your booklets. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We gather this morning to fulfill a mitzvah. The commandment of Livia, the commandment to escort a person on their final journey. On this day, we walk with Howard, and we walk with his memory. I feel certain that there's not a person in this room that has not enjoyed hearing Howard tell a story, or not a person here who hasn't smiled with him, occasionally winced with him. I dare say there's not a person in this room who has not enjoyed knowing Howard Adolph. Each of us have our own memories, but it's Howard's family that not only has the fullest memories, but also bears the weight of those memories on this day. And so as a community, we express our love and our prayers for your comfort. We will stand with you during these days, as Howard would have stood with us. To Leslie and to David, to Stephen and Ellen, to Lorin, to Brad and Cheryl. We pray for your comfort in these days. To grandchildren, to Bill and his wife Beth, to Doug and his husband Matt, to Maddie, Vivie, Nathan, and Zachary, and to great-grandchildren, to Evie, to Nayan, to Mabel, to Calvin. We hope that as the years go on, that you will build on those memories of your grandfather, great-grandfather, but will also take part of that joie de vivre that joy, that zest for living that was so much a part of Howard, and make it part of your lives as well. Because I'm certain that that is the greatest way to honor his memory. We have a tradition of tearing, kriya. And the idea is that no matter at what age, even the grand age of 95, we feel as though something has been torn away from us when we lose a loved one. Our tradition has the wisdom that in the midst of tearing, we also recite a blessing to remind us that we should not forget the blessings of Howard's life now and into the future, not even for a moment. So I invite Leslie, Stephen, Lorin, and Brad to rise. Please repeat after me. Baruch atah Adonai,
Baruch atah Adonai,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Eloheinu melech haolam,
Dayan,
Dayan,
ha'emet.
ha'emet.
Praised are you,
Praised are you,
Lord our God,
Lord our God,
ruler of the universe,
ruler of the universe,
the righteous judge.
the righteous judge.
In the book of Job, we are told the story of a person who suffered in life. There were those who came to Job and said, Job, life is darkness without light. Life isn't really worth living. And Job responded in a way that I think Howard would have as well. Should I not only take the good without the more challenging? And then he said these words, which I'm going to invite everyone here to please repeat after me. Adonai Natan,
Adonai Natan,
Adonai Lakach,
Adonai lakach,
Yehi Shem,
Yehi Shem,
Adonai Mevorach.
Adonai mevorach.
God has given,
God is given,
God has taken away.
God has taken away.
Praise be the name of the Lord.
Praise be the name of the Lord.
And you may be seated. In the Talmud, the repository of rabbinic literature and ideas, there's a fascinating conversation, a discussion amongst the rabbis about what questions you will be asked when you leave this world and stand before the throne of God. Now, you might have expected the rabbis to say, how did you observe the rituals of Jewish life? Were you a Sabbath observer? Did you observe the laws of kashrut? Did you study Torah? But these are not the questions the rabbis imagine us being asked. Amongst them are, were you honest in your business dealings? There's a series of these, but one stands out as we remember Howard. As we gather in this sanctuary, which had such meaning for Howard. It's a question that I think speaks directly to this moment. Did you enjoy all that life had to offer? Did you see the beauty that surrounded you? Did you love fully? Did you laugh with gusto? Did you bring others enjoyment? If those are the questions that Howard is asked as he ascends today to the throne of glory, then, to my mind, he will respond with a resounding yes. Yes, I did. Howard was true to his Hebrew name, Chaim, which means life. And we can say with some assurance that Howard Adolph lived fully to his last day, to his dying breath. There is a certain irony to this, or a lesson, I should say. You see, Howard's father, he died young. So in Howard's mind, he was going to follow suit. And he lived with that knowledge his entire life. He never believed that he would attain the age of 95. But I believe that that knowledge gave Howard incentive to live for every moment, to enjoy all that life offered from his partner Maita for 55 years. Enjoyment from his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, his friends. And let it be mentioned, just as it was in that beautiful obituary, no one in the history of the world derived more pleasure from lox and bagel than Howard. He enjoyed all that life had to offer. We should also note that Howard was the consummate mensch. He was a good human being. Howard was on my interview committee when I first came to Anshamet in 1982. I can still remember sitting in that room in the Standard Club and Howard's kindness to a newly minted rabbi who was nervous beyond words, and that wonderful, reassuring smile. Today we come to mourn. We come to remember. But most of all, we come today to celebrate Howard Adolph and a life well lived. Now, who better to help us in this sacred task than Howard's loving and beloved children? So it'll be our privilege to hear from Brad, from Leslie, from Lorin, and finally from Stephen. Brad?
Thank you, Rabbi. Until early this year, I knew of no one that had a greater zest for life than our father. And at times, I would think that Dad could live forever. I understand this is a statement made out of emotion rather than logic, but if anyone could achieve immortality, it would have been our father. 4 years, 3 months, and 20 days ago, standing on this bema at almost the exact time, my siblings and I, along with our father, eulogized our mother Maita. These 4+ years were the longest amount of time that Mom and Dad had ever been apart. And as the rabbi said, at the time of Mom's passing, they shared a marriage of 55 years. They weren't Howard or Maida or Howard. They were Howard and Maida. They were one. Well, Mom, you have had 4+ years of peace and serenity. So open a bottle of wine, turn the symphony music up. Dad will be home tonight for eternity. Howard Adolph was a multi-generational figure with a larger-than-life personality that could fit any room he was in, even the size of this sanctuary. Dad had a gift of connecting with people, no matter their age. Having 4 children with an age difference of 16 years, he interacted with each of our friends with ease. And what was even more amazing was how our friends connected and gravitated to him. Dad lived his life and never worried about his age. This past Saturday, I received an email from someone I had met a while back at a function. And in part, the email said, quote, "My wife made it a point to tell me today to read the obituary for this man with the last name Adolph, who she said with absolute certainty was an amazing man. She'd never met him, didn't know her husband and I knew each other, wouldn't know who Dad was if she passed him on the street. But she was right. Even in death, Dad connected to this person. He was many things in life: a husband, a father-in-law, Gramps, Papa, friend, mentor, and visionary. In the 1950s, he owned one of the first, if not the first, private key clubs in Chicago. It was called the Nocturne. It was a place where the Gold Coast crowd would go to meet, where entertainers would go after their shows at places like Mr. Kelly's and the Chez Paris, and where Dad's piano player, Orlando, wrote a song that he later sold to Frank Sinatra. That song was For Once in My Life. In later years, Dad owned a restaurant on Rush Street at Chicago with his partner, Tony Zale, the 2-time middleweight boxing champion. From Dad's background in the restaurant business, it just can't be a coincidence that my brother is a phenomenal chef. My sister sets the standards for hosting parties and events. And Stephen, you and I love to eat. Dad then moved into the industry of moving with Mayflower Moving Company. He was again a visionary by utilizing pro athletes during their off-season to go on sales calls with him and his salesmen. Players like Jim Purnell from the Bears and Pete Ward from the Sox. When Mayflower didn't want to pivot to a new initiative of his of hotel installation and remodeling, Dad left and started Ambassador Installations. And while you may not know what he did, you certainly know his work. Transforming hotels like the Orrington and the Blackstone here in Chicago, 3 major properties in Atlantic City, and working on over 50 properties across the United States and around the world. Growing up, our family enjoyed weekends at the Sandberg Pool. And who can forget our trips to the Moshells farm? Our father was like the sun and the moon. There was a consistency to him. And while at times it could be cloudy, we always knew he was there. Dad was always there with sage advice. Having grown up on the South Side, both of us, we were Sox fans. But he taught me that once you move north of Madison Avenue, you must become a Cub fan. One of the great memories I will forever have is being with my father and my twin sons at the 6th game of the Cubs World Series, 3 generations together. He loved his nieces and nephews, and thanks to him marrying Mom, we both went from only children to being part of a large family. And because of that, I now have my 3 siblings, my nieces and nephews, and our extended family to share and reminisce about the memories of Dad and Mom. Dad came from a generation where action spoke louder than words. He rarely, if ever, spoke about his service to our country. And if not for my brother Stephen, our brother Stephen, Dad would have never received the recognition that he never personally sought, but that he richly deserved. In closing, these past few years have been the best of my adult time with Dad. In the end, nothing was left unsaid. Everything was resolved. No regrets. As my immediate family knows, Dad used to like to have meetings. It could be on a subject of 5 minutes ago or 5 months ago. And I think I can safely say that we all look forward to these meetings like having a root canal without Novocaine. But we honored his request out of respect. So, Dad, if you ever want to talk, I'm here to listen. I love you. I will miss not being with you in person, and may your memory be a blessing to all of us.
Leslie?
I know you were here for my mom's. You guys are probably all taking bets if I'm going to cry or not, but I'm going to be good. It's not starting off good. Okay. Okay. Howard J. Moose. HJA. Howie. Howard J. Booby Boo. That was Mom's favorite. Shoot. Papa. Gramps. Daddy. Daddy's little girl. That one was my favorite. Where do I begin? You were the first man I ever loved, and you definitely made it a tough path for everyone else that followed. How lucky and blessed I was to have you in my life for 50 and a half years. They say there is nothing like a love between a father and a daughter, and we sure did have such an amazing bond. You've always been my #1 cheerleader. When I was 2 and a half and wanted to come here to school with my brothers, you and Mom told me that I couldn't go because I wasn't potty trained. But you took me aside when Mom wasn't in the room and told me, I know you can do it. So I came in the first day of school and said, I'm ready to go, I'm fully potty trained. And I tell everyone that story because everyone always asks why I was a full year plus younger than everyone in my grade. You were always there for me, watching all my activities, watching me at my ballet recitals, to being here in the Anshi gym, watching me as a cheerleader, to being on the sidelines of all my field hockey games and softball games at Latin. You never missed a game, and there was no bigger fan than you. I will never forget, and my Latin teammates will never forget either, the big softball game we had against Parker, and if you all know, Parker and Latin still to this day have a very big rivalry. And the umpire didn't show up, so the coaches asked you if you could ump the game. They were a little tad concerned that you weren't going to be fair, but you were so much so that you struck me out, and we lost the game. Thanks, Dad. You always waited up for me at night. Mom would always go right to sleep, but you wouldn't go to bed until I got home. I'm definitely following in your footsteps, that I'm the one that stays up until the kids get home. Growing up, your rule was if I wasn't home by midnight, I had a call. And if I didn't call, I would be in trouble. Obviously, this was before cell phones and Find My Phone. Every time I'd call, all my friends around would say, "Oh, say hi to Mr. Adolph, say hi to your dad," and they would end up getting on the phone and talking to you. This tradition went on from high school until just a few years ago when Dave and I were in the Dominican Republic with a few friends. Everyone was dancing and having fun and having cocktails, and I was in the corner on the phone with you. You used to put little notes that you'd put in my luggage and to put in my lunch bag when I would go on a trip, and I now do that for my children, and the tradition goes on because my girls do that for me. You always put family first and worked so hard always to make sure that we wanted for nothing, even when we couldn't really afford it. When Vivie interviewed you for the 8th grade family project, history project, detailing your life from start to finish, she asked you, "Why do you go out of your way to bring happiness to random strangers?" You replied with, "Do you want the truth? The truth. I firmly believe that the good Lord put me on this earth just to make people smile." Well, Dad, you did that. You did that just until the very end. These past few days, people have been reaching out and expressing their condolences, and so many of them had the same adjectives to describe you, and I couldn't have said it better myself. Hero, on and off the battlefield, life of the party, always smiling, flirty, great listener, storyteller, flirty, your kindness to everyone, your affection, flirty, and even your dirty mind. You were truly a spectacular person with a warm, wonderful soul. You brightened up every room you walked into and made everyone you were there to feel special. What a role model you've been for me, and how amazing it is that I can pass down your best qualities to Maddie, Vivie, and Nathan. Lead by example, warm, kind, loving, big heart with the warmest smile. Be a hard worker, cherish your family, always follow your passion, and do what is right, and just love life. During the past 4.5 years, Brad had the exact number, and as everyone knows, my math skills. It's 4 years, 3.5 months, or 28 days. Since Mom passed away, we have spent so much time together. And while I know you were missing Mommy so much, I cherished our lunches, dinners, errands, doctor's appointments, trips to Trader Joe's for your 5 different cereals. Yes, you did mix 5 different cereals in one bowl for breakfast. And just spending time with you. I know the past few months were especially tough, but I treasured those visits and your extra hard hand squeezes, never wanting to let go at the end of our visits. I know you knew that I was there. When I was there with Brad and Cheryl recently and we were giving you some juice, I said, "Would you rather this be a dirty martini?" And of course you said yes. How lucky for David and I to have you as the loving, long storytelling, always smiling, always fun papa for our Maddie, Vivie, and Nathan. We are so blessed that we've had all these times with you. Everyone that knew you knew that you just beamed when you talked about your grandchildren, loving being with them for anything and everything, watching their sports games, coming over for dinners, Cubs games, and more. 54.5 years of marriage with Maita Honey. Your love story was magical to watch, and the love Mom had for you and you had for her was awe-inspiring. You would say that when you walked into a party, Mom went right and you went left, but at any moment, if someone asked where your beloved Maita was, you knew exactly where she was at. And this I told at my mom's, but everyone that I told about you getting Mom a gift for the 18th of every month for the past 54.5 years said it was the sweetest thing. I know you love picking out pajamas, books, little trinkets that you knew Mom would love. Friends have shared that your love story is one they aspire to have for themselves, and your romance is something that they will remember for the rest of their lives. As Maddie and Vivie said the other day, let's celebrate the amazing, heroic, hilarious, flirty, loving moose and dad Papa was. Now him and Nana can watch over us and finally be together in peace. I know you guys will be enjoying some dirty martinis, turkey burgers, and listening to classical music. Daddy, I love you forever, and even then some, and I'll do my best to keep making you proud of me as your daughter, wife, and mother. DLG, always and forever. Love you, love you.
Thank you, Leslie. Next, it's our honor to hear from Lorin.
Good morning. No one was a better storyteller than my father. I know Stephen will share some stories about him with you. I think so many that the synagogue should have charged a 2-drink minimum. And I also have many to tell, but unfortunately I will refrain from that today. I was last in this bema 4 years ago talking about his beloved, his Maita Honey. So today we lay him to rest in perpetuity next to her. There was never a love affair like Maita and Howard, one that spanned over 55 years. The past few days I've had so many thoughts in my head that I know I am remiss in not sharing them now, and I'll be brief. But all I wanted to say is that he is out of his pain, he is out of his suffering, and at peace now. He will forever be missed, and I thank him for helping shape me to become the person I am. Dad, I love you.
Thank you, Lorin. And finally, we look to Stephen.
Hero. That is always, when I think of Dad, the first word that comes to my mind. In birthday cards, Father's Day cards, I would always write to Dad, "Dad, you're my hero." And as has been already said eloquently by the rabbi, not only was Dad a hero because of the service to our country, both in World War II, both in Europe and in the Pacific, but he was a hero to me because he literally would do anything for his family. He would sacrifice anything for his family. Dad was born in 1925, so he was a very young kid when the Depression started, and his father, Louis, my grandfather that I never knew, he lost his business, and for a period of time, Dad and my grandparents had to go live with somebody else. And, through Dad's whole life, when he started Ambassador Installations, he worked so hard. Many times he would work 7 days a week. He would work way past midnight. And I would always wonder, where did that stamina come from, that resilience, that striving? And I think it came from a story that I know is seared in my dad's mind, and it was seared in my mind and my siblings' mind because he told it very often, and it was about when he was 6 or 7 years old, and he was walking down the street on the south side with his mother, Sonia, my grandmother, who I never knew, and they passed by a bakery, and Dad pointed and he said, "Mom, can we go inside and get that sweet roll?" And Sonia, kind of crouched down and, to be eye level with Howard and said, "Howard, I wish we could, but unfortunately we can't afford it." And Dad never, ever wanted us to have to go through that predicament, and we never did. Dad, you're my hero. He is, my siblings have said, he was a magnetic personality. He was always, all of our friends gravitated towards him. He was always the life of the party, and that was because, as mentioned before, he was a legendary storyteller. I like to think of Dad as he was Seinfeld before Seinfeld, and that, for 99% of the population, what happened that particular day would have been considered mundane. But Dad could come home when we had dinner together, and Dad was that unique 1% that could somehow spin that mundane into a captivating story. So to honor Dad's legendary storytelling, I have chosen 4 stories. It wasn't easy. I had to winnow it down from about 20. So I'm going to share 4 of my favorite stories of Dad. The first story happened on their first trip to Sydney, Australia. where I lived for 7 years. And we spent the first day together, and then the second day, my parents went, as people do when they're in Sydney, went to the Sydney Opera House. They took a tour of the Opera House, and then afterwards, my dad was taking pictures of the Opera House, and my mother, Maita, had gone maybe 50, 60 yards ahead of my dad. And my dad wanted to get her attention, so he yelled, "Mate!" And then all of a sudden, about 30 guys turned around and stared at my dad, and my dad never made that mistake again. The second story happened before I was alive. It happened in the 1950s, mid-1950s, when Dad was around 30 years old. His father, Louis, he was never really a successful businessman, and money was always tight. And even though Louis really loved cars, and especially new cars, he could never afford one in his entire life. So my dad wanted to do something special for Louis. So over a period of about 18 months, he scrimped and saved and took an amount of his paycheck and put it aside every month until he had enough money. And he secretly bought Louis a new car. But in the dad wanting to have a sort of exciting reveal, he picked up the car, parked it a couple of blocks from where they lived, and they went out for a walk. And sure enough, on cue, as Dad had predicted, as they passed by the car, Louis said, "Wow, Howard, look, this is the new Ford. Look how beautiful it is." And then Dad reaches into his pocket, pulls out the keys and said, "Dad, I'm happy that you like the car because I bought it for you." And Louis had no idea what was going on. He was in complete shock. It took him about 5 minutes to even understand what was going on. And then, he thanked Dad. Dad left because he was still in shock. And his mother, Sonia, called him up that night and said that Louis, who in general was more of a stoic guy than Dad was, he basically was crying all night because he couldn't believe the gesture. So that's story number 2. Story number 3 happened in 1970. And, one of the themes that my siblings so eloquently said was Dad could get along with everybody. So in like 69, they went on a cruise on the Homeric, and they met the Rosemans, who lived in Philadelphia. And they became fast friends. So one weekend, my parents went out to Philadelphia to spend the weekend with the Rosemans, and they had a teenage son, Bobby, that my dad sort of bonded with over the weekend. Fast forward 6 months, it's July 10th, 1970. It's Lorin's 6th birthday. We're living just down the street at 3800, and there's like a buzz on our intercom downstairs. And, yes, who is it? And, it's Bobby Roseman. So he comes upstairs, and Bobby wasn't getting along with his parents, and he decided to run away from home. And he hopped a plane from Philadelphia to Chicago, and he ended up spending the summer with us. Obviously, the parents agreed to it. And it was interesting. I actually got in touch with Bobby yesterday. And, I asked him about, what happened? And he's just like, your dad just connected with me. He said that your dad then, throughout the rest of my life, was always like a second father to me and always loved me unconditionally. The last story, the 4th story, happened during high school. I ran track and cross country in high school, and my dad literally came to every single meet. There was kind of a joke on the team that my dad must have been unemployed, because how could he come to every single meet? But, as Leslie said, with, softball and her sports, this was important to him, and he rearranged his schedule. So I was a senior, and we were at regionals, and I was always about the 4th or 5th best person on the team. I'd never, through the 4 years of high school, I'd never come in first. And we were at regionals, and I felt great that day. Of course, Dad was at the meet. And with about 100 yards left in the race, I was second behind Tommy Mowat. And as I can see John and Flip down there, Tommy Mowat was an exceptional athlete. He was much better, stronger, faster than I was. But I was feeling great that day. And I could see my dad at the finish line. And just somehow I found this extra gear. And with about 10 yards to go, I passed Tommy Mowat. And I came in first. And my dad was there. This is my dad who, in the war had a barn blown up on him by the Germans. And he had a slip disc and a disintegrated disc. And it didn't matter. I ran into my dad's arms. And he twirled me around. And I told him, Dad, I won that race for you. Dad, you're my hero. Thank you.
What a privilege to listen to each of you. And all of us have been offered a lesson about kibud av, honoring your father, and why it is such a central commandment. Each of you have honored your father in a very beautiful way today. And I know that wherever Howard is, he is smiling from ear to ear to hear your beautiful words. Let me close with 4 Hebrew words that I believe speak to the man. The first is sherut, service. Howard gave service to others, and it was always based on a sense of responsibility to give back. We noted at the beginning that Howard gave service, sherut, to this country. But the fact is that whatever Howard did, he gave part of himself. This synagogue is the beneficiary of Howard's sherut, his service. He served on the board of this congregation. He also served as an usher on the high holidays, and I can still see him standing in the aisle with that white carnation, greeting everyone, welcoming everyone. He wanted to be of service. But he also gave great service to what we then called the Anshe Emet Day School, now known as the Bernard Zell Anshe Emet Day School. And the thing about Howard is this: he always wanted to leave things better than he found them, a trait that he has most notably passed down to his children. Which brings us to the next word, mishpacha, family. Mishpacha in Hebrew is more than the biological connection that we share with our family. It is that sense of responsibility and more, the knowledge that if you are family, that I will be there for you no matter what. That was Howard. He was devoted, as we heard so beautifully, to both his father and his mother. He grew up with a sense that if his mother called, he would be there. And she called. He raised his children with that same sense that he would move heaven and earth for them. That generational love and respect for Howard by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, as we all know from your beautiful words today, was palpable. We didn't hear them, we felt them. Cherished, service, mishpacha, family, kihila, community. Howard loved people, and he was always making new friends, even in this past year. Everyone that he met was a potential friend. Now, it's true that Howard was not hard to pick out in a room wearing one of his beloved Coogee sweaters. But if Howard Adolph was your friend, you were a lucky person. Because he'd be there. He'd have your back. I'm struck by the work that Howard did, most notably in the hotel industry. For what are hotels but gathering places for people? Maybe that's why he had such a good name in that industry. One last word. Ahava. Love. Howard loved openly, and he expressed himself honestly. But I would be remiss if I didn't spend a moment talking about Howard's love for Maita. In our midrashic tradition, in our rabbinic imagination, the rabbis teach that before we're born, we are joined with our perfect other. And then when we're born, we split apart, and if we're lucky, somehow, some way, we find that perfect one. Howard and Maita were that perfect couple, even if Maita's parents did not at first agree. You see, Maita's suitors drove Cadillacs and not Corvairs. But Howard won her heart. Though he had to decide whether to spend the money on an engagement ring or a honeymoon, because he couldn't afford both. What Maita and Howard shared was something far more valuable, a deep love and respect for one another. And these two people joined together and showered their children with that love, and together they ensured that their children attend the finest schools. And they made all necessary sacrifices for that to happen. Most notably, Maita believed in Howard in times when Howard may not have believed in himself. And when he started that business of his, she was the one who typed the letters. They were a pair, true partners in life in every possible way. I began by speaking about that question we will be asked in heaven. Did you enjoy all that life offered? In some ways, that was Maita's greatest gift to Howard. Maita made sure that Howard saw and enjoyed all the beauty that the world offered. WFMT in the house, the opera, the symphony, and traveling the world together. Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor a man who gave Cherished, gave service, who made a difference, who was devoted to his mishpacha, to his family, who valued kihila, community, and other people, and was blessed to know true ahava, love, and have it reciprocated. Today, Howard Adolph offers each of us an example of how to enjoy all that life offers us. But we would be remiss if we didn't give Howard the last word. So I invite you to look to the monitors.
I joined the military to help our country that was at war. I was 17 and going to the University of Illinois. I was on my way to a fraternity meeting when Pearl Harbor happened, it seemed to be terrible to take people's lives for what I consider was not a good reason. I joined the military because I thought it was the right thing to do. I was in Company M of the 86th Infantry Division, which meant that I fired a machine gun. I'm Jewish, and I was concerned about the Jewish people and what was happening to them. As we were getting closer into France, I remember we took over a town. In the back of a tremendously large home was a group of Jewish people who were being held by the Nazis. And I remember one man there, he was looking at me scared, and his eyes looked, and he ran over to me and he held me. He was now free. I'll never forget it. It was good luck many times to be able to help.
Thank you, Howard. It should be noted that this wonderful picture on the front cover of your booklets was taken at a Northwestern football game. Northwestern was playing Wisconsin that day, and Howard, during halftime, was honored for his service and given a special jersey as the crowd acknowledged him. We rise as we remember Howard Adolph.
Shalom.
God, you are exalted and full of compassion. We pray that you will take the beloved soul of Howard Adolph under the wings of your divine presence. We ask you, God, to remember the many worthy and good deeds that Howard performed in the land of the living. May Howard's soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May he rest b'shalom. May he rest in peace, and to that we can all say Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the interment service will continue in Memorial Park Cemetery located at 9900 Grosse Point Road, Skokie. The family will be together at the Koo residence at 1834 North Walcott Avenue in Chicago, Monday and Tuesday from 4:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. Memorial contributions in his memory to the Honor Flight Chicago. All that information is on the service folder, and for those of you who are joining us online, that information can be found on our website. For those of you who will be driving in the funeral procession to the cemetery, the procession will be forming in front of the synagogue. For those of you who are in the parking lot, please just come around. Even though the street says one way, you are only going one way, but we're going to be blocking it so no one will come that way as you're going the one way. And then we're going to have the procession just form right here. Please obtain an orange safety funeral sticker to place on the right-hand side of your windshield. Have your bright lights and hazard lights on at all times. For additional measures of safety, we will be providing many of the cars with a flag that will be affixed to the top portion of your car. We'll have a car in the back of the funeral procession to hopefully keep other cars from entering the procession. And for your own personal safety, I strongly recommend using your horn liberally as you're going through the intersections. Please do not speak or text, and your cellular phone will drive you to a cemetery. The following people have been asked to serve as pallbearers. When I call your name, please stand next to Mr. Adolph's casket. David Koo, Bill Adolph, Doug London, Matt London, Rob Smoller, Ron Saltz. And honorary pallbearers will be David Friedland and Jonathan Udesky. This time I invite everyone to please rise and stand in place as we escort the casket of Mr. Howard J. Adolph, along with his family, Rabbi Siegel and Cantor Brook, from the sanctuary. Then you may return to your cars.
יושב בסתר אל